time for part 6 of Roald Dahl's The Twits, and we'd got to No Bird Pie for Mr. Twit. The next morning, when Mr. Twit came out with his huge basket to snatch all the birds from the big dead tree, there wasn't a single one on it. They were all sitting on top of the monkey cage. The roly-poly bird was there as well, and Mugglewump and his family were inside the cage, and the whole lot of them were laughing at Mr. Twit. Mr. Twit wasn't going to wait another week for his bird pie supper. He loved bird pie. It was his favourite meal. So that very same day he went after the birds again. This time he smeared all the top of the monkey bars with the sticky glue, as well as the branches of the big dead tree. "Now I'll get you," he said, "whichever one you sit on." The monkeys crouched inside the cage watching all this, and later on, when the roly-poly bird came swooping in for an evening chat, they shouted out, "Don't land on our cage, roly-poly bird, it's covered in sticky glue. So is the tree." And that evening, as the sun went down and all the birds came in again to roost, the roly-poly birds flew around and round the monkey cage and the big dead tree, singing out his warning. "There's sticky stuff now on the cage and the tree. If you land on either, you'll never get free. So fly away, stay up high, or you'll finish up tomorrow in a hot bird pie." Mr. and Mrs. Twit go off to buy guns. The next morning, when Mr. Twit came out with his huge basket, not a single bird was sitting on either the monkey cage or the big dead tree. They were all perched happily on the roof of Mr. Twit's house. The roly-poly bird was up there as well, and the monkeys were in the cage, and the whole lot of them were laughing at Mr. Twit. "I'll wipe that silly laugh off your beaks," Mr. Twit screamed at the bird. "I'll get you next time, you filthy feathery frumps. I'll wring your necks, the whole lot of you. I'll have you bubbling in the pot for bird pie before this day is out." "How are you going to do that?" asked Mrs. Twit, who had come outside to see what all the noise was about. "I won't have you smearing sticky glue all over the roof of our house." Mr. Twit got very excited. "I've got a great idea," he cried. He didn't bother to keep his voice down, because he didn't think the monkeys could understand. "We'll both go into town right away, and we'll buy a gun each," he shouted. "How's that?" "Brilliant!" cried Mrs. Twit, grinning and showing her long yellow teeth. "We'll buy those big shotguns and spray out 50 bullets or more with each bang." "Exactly," said Mr. Twit. "Lock up the house while I go and make sure the monkeys are safely shut away." Mr. Twit went over to the monkey cage. "Attention!" he barked in his fearsome monkey trainer voice. "Upside down, all of you, and jump to it, one on top of the other. Quick! Get on with it, or you'll feel Mrs. Twit's stick across your backsides." Obediently, the poor monkeys stood on their hands and clambered one on top of the other, with Mugglewump at the bottom and the smallest child at the very top. "Now stay there till we come back," Mr. Twit ordered. "Don't you dare move, and don't overbalance. When we return in 2 or 3 hours' time, I shall expect to find you all in exactly the same positions as you are now. You understand?" With that, Mr. Twit marched away. Mrs. Twit went with him, and the monkeys were left alone with the birds. As soon as Mr. and Mrs. Twit had disappeared down the road, the monkeys all flipped back on to their feet the right way up. "Quick, get the key!" Mugglewump called out to the roly-poly bird. who was still sitting on the roof of the house. "What key?" shouted the roly-poly bird. "The key to the door of our cage," cried Mugglewump. "It's hanging on a nail in the work-shed. That's where he always puts it." The roly-poly bird flew down and came back with the key in his beak. Mugglewump reached a hand through the bars of the cage and took the key. He put it in the lock and turned it. The door opened and all four monkeys leapt out together. "We are free!" cried the two little ones. "Where shall we go, Dad? Where shall we hide?" "Don't get excited," said Mugglewump. "Calm down, everyone. Before we escape from this beastly place, we have one very important thing to do." "What?" they asked him. "We're going to turn those terrible Twits upside down." "We're going to what?" they cried. "You must be joking, Dad." "I'm not joking," Mugglewump said. "We're going to turn both Mr. and Mrs. Twit upside down with their legs in the air." "Don't be ridiculous," the roly-poly bird said. "How can we possibly turn those two maggoty old monsters upside down?" We can," cried Mugglewump. "We are going to make them stand on their heads for hours and hours, perhaps forever. Let them see what it feels like for a change." "How?" said the roly-poly bird. "You just tell me how." Mugglewump laid his head on one side, and a tiny twinkling little smile touched the corners of his mouth. "Now and again," he said, "but not very often, I have a brilliant idea. This is one of them. Follow me, my friends, follow me." He scampered off towards the house, and the three of the monkeys and the roly-poly bird went after him. "Buckets and paintbrushes!" cried Mugglewump. "That's what we want next. There are plenty in the work-shed. Hurry up, everyone. Get a bucket and a paintbrush." Inside Mr. Twit's work-shed there was an enormous barrel of hog-tight sticky glue, the stuff he used for catching birds. "Fill your buckets," Mugglewump ordered. "We are now going into the big house." Mrs. Twit had hidden the key to the front door under the mat, and Mugglewump had seen her doing it, so it was easy for them to get in. In they went, all four monkeys with their buckets of sticky glue. Then came the roly-poly bird flying in after them, with a bucket in his beak and a brush in his claw. Let's see what the monkey's plan is, and I'll see you next time.